Hey everybody, and welcome back to Pre-Law Talk. My name is Joshua Garlick, and I will be your host. I'm a current BYU Idaho communications student who will be applying to law school very soon. I created this podcast in order to inform students about pre-law topics such as the LSAT, the application process, law schools, and some advice that I have. So we've been talking about the LSAT for the past couple episodes. We've gone over the reading comprehension section, the logical reasoning section, and some important materials that you'll need in preparation for the LSAT. The LSAT is extremely important, once again, to your admittance into law school. It's something to take seriously and to put a lot of time and effort into. Practice. Today we'll be talking about the analytical reasoning section, otherwise known as logic games. I wanted to save this one for last because it's the most unfamiliar to people who are taking the LSAT. It's a new skill that you'll need to acquire, and so it'll take more practice than the other sections in getting down just how this section is completed. I'm going to be referring to it as logic games rather than analytical reasoning, just because it is like a game, and a lot of other people use the term logic games. So within each logic game section, there will be 4 games, kind of like the reading comprehension section. Each game will contain 5 to 6 questions and 1 scenario for that game. I also call this the setup. So just to give you a brief roadmap, we're going to go over 5 different topics. First, we'll go over the scenario and setup. Second, we'll go over the rules and inferences of the game. Third, we'll go over diagramming. Fourth, we'll go over the questions and answers. And last, we'll go over some of the challenges that you'll face within this section. Alright, so first, let's go over the scenario and the setup. This is going to be the basic, brief definition or description of what the game will be. It'll help describe the type of game that you're going to play. And I break down the types of games into 4 different groups. So first are sequential games, where you'll be placing objects in a specific order. Second are grouping games, where you'll be grouping the different objects based on the rules that you get. The third are OR games, where you will have to break the game into 2 different scenarios, one of which will be used per question. And fourth are unique games, where something will be described that can't be placed into either of the other 3 sections, and so it is unique. You have to kind of think on your toes in order to figure out what is or how to diagram this game. And so, speaking about rules and inferences, our second topic, there will be between 3 and 6 rules per game. So once you've identified the type of game that you're going to be playing, you will go through the rules, and while you're going through the rules, you'll be diagramming and kind of getting down in your mind what the game is asking for and what the rules imply and inferences that you can take from those rules. So for an example, a rule might look like, if you're looking at so let's take for example a sequential game that you're playing. So you're going to be putting in order these 5 students. You have Abby, Becky, Carol, Danielle, and Francine. Why not? So you have A, B, C, D, and F. and the game is asking you to put them in order of that they presented in. So the rules are going to mention that Abby presents before Becky. That's an example of a rule. Often rules can be linked. These are called inferences, and they will help you to answer the questions that will be asked later. So for instance, if you have the rule Abby presents before Becky, but Becky presents second, an inference from those two rules together is that Abby presents first. That's a fact. It's based off of the rules that you've been given, and those inferences are what are going to help you answer questions more quickly within this section and get through the games. Moving on to number 3, diagramming. Like I kind of said, you're going to be using the empty space on your test in order to diagram these games. So a way to represent, diagramming is simply a way to represent the game being played and the rules of the game, so that you don't have to refer back to the block of text to know that you're playing a sequential game or a grouping game, and you won't have to look back at the rules to know that Abby, or A, presents before Becky, or B. You can simply diagram that as A-B to know that Abby presents before Becky. It's a much simpler way of getting a grasp of the rules and of the game that you're playing in order to answer the questions more quickly. So while you're reading through the scenario and the rules, you'll be setting up, you'll be diagramming what that game is going to look like. So you'll need to understand who the variables are within the game. So in the example that I mentioned before of A, B, C, D, and F, those are your 5 possible variables that you'll be placing into spaces or sequence. If you've ever played the game Hangman and you have those blank spaces, you want to be using a similar or that exact form of diagramming in order to fill spots. So if you know that A, B, C, D, and F are going to be presenting in a specific order, you know that there are 5 slots that will be filled. And if you get a rule that says that Becky presents second, you can automatically place Becky within that number 2 position, and she is locked in there, and you know that from the rules, and this is how you diagram, and this is how you make different inferences based off of the other rules that connect with Becky, position 2, before, after, or any other rules that you have. Moving on to questions and answers. The first question that you answer will most often verify that you understand the rules of the game. So you'll go through the rules one by one and simply eliminate wrong answers. So it'll say something like, which of the following is a possible sequence of the presentations? And any answer that doesn't have Becky in slot 2 is automatically wrong. Any answer that does not have Abby presenting before Becky is automatically wrong. And you'll do that for each of the rules that have been provided for you. And you should end up with one right answer on that first question. This helps you to identify whether or not you understand the game that you're playing, as well as the rules and how they work within the game. If you, for some reason, can't get this answer, there's something wrong. And you need to go back to the type of game, you need to reread the scenario, reread the rules, and make sure that you've diagrammed correctly and that you're not mistaking anything or making any inferences that shouldn't be made. The majority of other questions after the first one will introduce new info to you. So for example, you'll have your rules already set up, but the question will ask if C is in slot 3, which of the following, and then it might say must be true, must be false, could be true, or could be false. And then from that new information that you have, you'll have to determine, which of the answers is true, false, or could be true. Speaking of must be true, must be false questions, these are some of the most common questions that are asked within the logic game section, which is nice because you can learn how to answer them correctly. So whenever you're given a must be true question, you're asked, if C must be in slot 3, which of the following must be true? Right off the bat, one of the answers will be true and the other 5, will be false, must be false. And so it's easier to look for one answer that must be true than to eliminate 4 answers that must be false based off of the new information. With a must be false question, the same rule applies. It's easier to find one answer that must be false than to find the other 4 that must be true and verify those. With could be true questions, it's a bit more tricky because if you're looking for something that could be true, the other answers must be false. And the only way to verify that you have the right answer is to eliminate those answers that must be false. Could be false questions are rarely asked, so I wouldn't worry too much about those ones, but it's simply the opposite of a could be true question. One of my favorite things about the logic game section versus the other sections on the LSAT is that it works like an equation. And if you put the equation together right, you know that you have the right answer or you know that you have the wrong answer. And so this is the section that you can feel most confident about moving forward. And if you get down the skills that you need, you should be able to get a lot of this right. But let's talk about some of the challenges you'll face. One of the biggest challenges that you'll face is timing. Like the other sections, but probably even more within this section, because 1, it's a new skill, which is another challenge. And 2, you need to practice. You need to practice going quickly, diagramming quickly, and being able to make inferences based off of the rules that you're giving in rapid succession. I hope that this episode has been helpful to you in understanding a bit more about logic games. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I'm always willing to answer anyone's questions and help you guys out. So I hope that you've enjoyed this, and we'll talk next time. Special shout out to Ben Sounds. Go to bensounds.com for all your free royalty-free music. See you next time.